Welcome to Built to Go, a Van Live podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Wagg, coming to you from the College of Curiosity. This time it's episode 293, and I am back in the States, and we're going to talk about things that are actually better in the U.S. I know that sounds strange coming from me, but it's true. We're also going to talk about the ProMaster City in a little bit more depth than last time. We'll have a product review of a very common thing that everybody has, but this one works really well, and we're going to visit some place that's made out of fish guts, because that's fun. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and welcome me back, because I am finally back in the States. Thank you for your patience waiting for me to produce an actual real episode here. I did record 2 episodes while I was on the road, and I just released them very dirty and raw, and apparently they didn't get propagated to Spotify, and you may not have seen them there. I don't know what's going on there. I did make them, and you can find them at builttogo.com if nowhere else. Hopefully this one gets where it's supposed to be. So I just came back from this crazy long trip visiting a whole bunch of different places kind of around the Iberian Peninsula of Lisbon and Spain and Gibraltar, and then heading up into the Balearic Islands of Menorca, and Corsica, finally ending up in Nice, France. Wonderful trip, wonderful people, did all kinds of things. And it's too big of a topic for me to go into in any great depth. But we were sailing on this amazing ship, the Royal Clipper, 5-masted, full-rigged ship, largest in service in the world, 42 sails. And unfortunately, the wind didn't cooperate so much, so we didn't do much of it under sail, but we did do a bit, and it was a wonderful trip. If anybody is interested in cruising in a totally different way. I mean, it was so different from a cruise that I don't think of it that way. Well, let me know and I'll tell you about it and how you can do it too. But I had this crazy thought a few times that while I find that many, many, many things are better outside the U.S. than they are inside the U.S., there were a few things that I was like, this is actually better in the U.S. than it is here. And it happened repeatedly, so I was like, well, let me just kind of make a list of these things, because that's only fair. And, well, let's just jump in here. One thing that is better, and call this number 1, in the U.S. is restrooms. And I have to put a big caveat on there, because it's only true in the sense that it's easier to find free restrooms in the U.S. than it is in many other countries. Now, once you find the restrooms in those other countries, they're often much nicer than you'll find in the U.S., especially in places like Tokyo. But finding them can be hard, and I've seen all different varieties of public restrooms now, and some of them are odd. Like I remember in Quito, Ecuador, in the big tourist area, there's this big plaza. And in order to use the public restrooms there, you had to pay someone, and they handed you a very tiny little bit of toilet paper as like your ticket to go in and use the facilities. And for many of us, that may not have been enough toilet paper. So if you're ever going to Quito, you might want to bring your own toilet paper. You're still going to have to pay the fee, though. And in many places, public restrooms just aren't a thing, and even restaurants, like, quick lunch-style restaurants, won't have any restrooms, whereas that's almost a requirement in the U.S. So if you are going to travel outside the U.S., do some research into how the bathrooms are there, because they might be different than you're used to. But again, many of them are much, much nicer than you'd find in the U.S. I mean, we have this weird thing with the stalls don't go to the floor or the ceiling, and you can kind of peek over them. That's a U.S. thing mostly. Most countries don't have that. Number 2 is drinks at restaurants. Now, you can get all kinds of wonderful drinks at restaurants, and one thing you can get in Europe, for example, is sparkling water, which is a little bit hard to get in the U.S. You'll ask for it, and they'll be like, "Do you mean like seltzer water or whatever?" They'll just get it out of the soda fountain. Yeah, you'll get a bottle of it in Europe, but you'll have to pay for it. In the U.S., you pretty much can get water for free, and if you order soda, in most places it's endless soda. If you want to have 5 sodas, that's fine. That is not how it is in Europe at all. If you order anything to drink, you are going to pay for it at most restaurants. And ice is kind of not normal. They don't typically put ice in drinks. That's an American thing. And if they notice you're American, in tourist areas I noticed this, that they would see me coming, obviously an American, despite the fact that I was wearing a Canadian Tire hat, they would automatically put ice in my drinks because they knew what I wanted. It was very nice of them to do that, but that is not the norm. So, at least from an American perspective, I think drinks at restaurants are better in the U.S. than they are in many other places. And that has nothing to do with the quality of the drinks. It's just the fact that you can get unlimited drinks for much lower price than you can in Europe, especially. Number 3, and this is big and probably the most important thing on this list. In the U.S., we have the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that facilities must allow people with disabilities to use everything in the building the same as somebody who didn't have disabilities. So there must be ramps, there must be elevators, there has to be space for wheelchairs, there must be a restroom big enough for a wheelchair to go in, all these things. That is an American thing, and it is not anywhere else. There are some accommodations in some places, but they're not guaranteed. A lot of the places we just came from had no ramps at all. There were only stairs. The bathrooms were tiny. The streets were cobblestones, and I know people that just simply could not have navigated it. Now, these places, some of them are 3,000 years old, so you can cut them some slack. But yeah, for people who are used to ADA accommodations and rely on them, you're going to need to do a lot more research if you leave the U.S. to see just how things are for getting around. Number 4, I'm kind of surprised to be saying this, but highways are typically better in the U.S. than most other countries. I say most because obviously Austria and Germany and their Autobahn is a better, nicer system than we have in the U.S. But in most countries, they don't have things like our interstates. I remember being in New Zealand and learning that they don't really have highways on either island. There's a little bit around Auckland, but the South Island is 2 lanes are all you're going to get. That's their highways. So the big interstates where you can just have a concrete river heading to where you want to go with nothing in the way, traffic in Atlanta and Chicago and LA and other places notwithstanding, yeah, that's also a U.S. thing. And you'll find that in Canada too, but a lot of countries don't have anything like that, and driving long distances is a windy, arduous experience. And most countries, they don't think in terms of driving long distance like that because their countries simply aren't as big. So I have to give that one to the U.S. Number 5, and this one comes up a lot, is choices in stores. You go to an American supermarket grocery store, one of those mega mart kind of places, and you have 16 different kinds of peanut butter and 3 different kinds of romaine lettuce and all these different options, and that is just not a thing in most countries. They will have peanut butter, maybe, but there'll be 1 kind of peanut butter. There might be 2 kinds of this. They just simply do not have the variety that we have in the U.S. And partially that's because they're not as reliant on the supermarket model as we are. U.S. is a car culture, everything's with cars, and the supermarket makes more sense. In a lot of other countries, they're not relying on the car like that, and they will go to the butcher and the bakery, and they'll just walk there. You walk to the farthest place, get what you need, and then on the way back, you stop at the pharmacy, which they're on every corner. Pharmacies are everywhere. Get what you need there, and that's how they do it. And so the idea of one big store that sells everything isn't as important to them. So from U.S. eyes, it looks like they just don't have the variety. And while they may not, when you add everything up, they do have more variety than it appears. I always try to go to grocery stores whenever I travel just to see what it's like. And they're smaller and they have fewer things. But I still find it fascinating because they're things that I can't get in the U.S. And I also notice the things that I think of as just normal staples that I couldn't get there should I have moved there. So if variety is the spice of your life, you're going to find more of it in the U.S. in regards to groceries and things like that. Number 6. seems like a thing that maybe you don't want or maybe you do, but drive-thrus are not as common outside the U.S. Some states have embraced drive-thru culture to a crazy degree. There's drive-thru liquor stores in Florida, and we have drive-in theaters in the U.S., which is pretty much a U.S. thing, although they're mostly gone now. Every fast food in the world is drive-thru. There's drive-thru pizza now at Domino's. It's a little bit crazy, but you get used to it, and the idea of being able to, like when I go to the pharmacy, I drive through at the pharmacy, and they just hand me my stuff, and I have to get out of the car. That's not something I've ever seen in any other country. So if you are used to that kind of thing, you're going to have a harder time finding anything like that in other countries. And again, that is because the U.S. is a car culture much more so than other countries. Number 7, and this one's going to be controversial, I'll bet, airports. Airports are better in the U.S., and I'm not talking about anything about the airports except the design of the airports. Now, this is general. This isn't always true. I think the airport in Singapore is probably the best airport in the world, period. But overall, airports in the U.S. are more comfortable than airports, say, in Europe. If you are familiar with how uncomfortable airports are in the U.S., you probably think I'm crazy. But this is what I've run into in quite a few different countries I've been in lately. They don't have dedicated counters for the airlines. What they do is they have a staff that works at the airport that moves from airline to airline, and they assign them counters. So let's say you get to the airport 4 hours before your flight, because lately these days, that's not a bad idea. You won't be able to do anything at all until they assign those ticket counters to that flight. You have to look on the board. And then you have to go, and everyone rushes and waits in this really long line. And because they're almost always international flights I'm doing, you always have to actually check in with somebody to show them your passport. So it's not like you can just skip that part. And then, this is the part that drives me crazy, you can't go to your gate because they haven't announced it yet. What they do is they send you to a central area that's basically a shopping area, and there are just a few seats, very few seats in my experience. And you're supposed to wait there until maybe 45 minutes before your flight when they will announce the gate. And then when you go to the gate, then you're kind of trapped there. There's often another security that you have to go through to get there, and there's very few services there. There may not even be restrooms there. So the experience for me is that I will finally get through the airport, and then I'm just stuck in this kind of mallish shopping area that mostly sells high-end stuff. It's not really stuff I want. There aren't as many food options, and there's just no place to sit until I can actually sit at the gate, and even that might not be possible because they might have 40 seats for a plane that holds 300 people. U.S. airports are not great, but I think they're better than this model, and I'm sure it's very efficient from the airport staff standpoint, but boy, it makes travel a lot more burdensome, in my opinion. Number 8, store hours. Stores are open longer in the U.S. When I was, in my teen years and young adult years, stores were open 24 hours regularly. Almost everything was open 24 hours. Supermarkets, Walmart, 7-Eleven, all these things were open 24 hours. And that has gone away, but it's still open more than they are over there. At 8 o'clock, a lot of stores will shut up. A lot of them shut in the afternoons. And it's a little tricky to figure out what hours you can actually go and do things. Now, you'll get used to that. If you were to move to Spain, you would get used to their schedule where some restaurants don't open until 8 p.m. But the number of hours stores are open, it seems to me to be much longer in the U.S., which gives you more opportunities to shop. Now, whether that's a good lifestyle or not, that's up for debate. But if you're somebody who needs to buy something, having more hours in which you can do that is a better thing, so I'm going to give that to the U.S. Number 9, TSA Pre. I'm separating this out from airports because this is actually a big deal. In the U.S., we have TSA Pre. We also have Global Entry, which gives you TSA Pre, and we also have Clear, which is kind of a commercial version of TSA Pre. But the point is that if you're a frequent traveler, you can go through a little program and get a special status where you can skip the really long line and skip some of the restrictions and get through security quicker. TSA Pre people don't have to take off their shoes, they don't have to take off their belts, they don't have to take computers out of their bags, all this stuff. And it's not perfect, sometimes it can take a long time as well, but generally it is quicker than the general line. Most other countries don't have anything like that, and everyone has to go through the regular line. And it's kind of a pain in the butt because every country does it different. For example, in France, they were very, very paranoid about liquids. You had to, just every kind of liquid had to come out, and everything that was even close to a computer or a camera, everything had to come out. You basically had to unpack your bag and put it in little bins. And then in Scandinavia, they didn't care at all about electronics. You could keep all your electronics in the bag. It was fine. I went through Copenhagen. But liquids, again, were a problem, but differently. Like, they didn't care about the little liquids or, like, toothpaste. They were just concerned about larger liquids. The thing that's hard about this is it's not like there's a sign that tells you all this stuff. You just kind of have to do it and see what happens. And I remember in Spain, they kept sending my bag back. And, like, you have a computer in here? Like, yes, okay, I took it out. I sent it through. And then it came back, and he's like, what's in here? And I was like, I don't know. Why'd you send it back? It's like, do you have a computer in here? No, I took it out. And he's like, do you have an iPad in here? I was like, yes. And he's like, well, an iPad is a computer. I'm like, it is to you. It's not to a lot of other airports where you have to take the computer out but not the iPad. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. It's just a cultural thing that the only way to learn it is to actually go through it, which frustrates me. I really wish there was just a simple sign at the beginning of all of them that told you what to do. But we don't even have that in the U.S. It's not like we're consistent in the U.S. either. However, TSA Pre is actually a nice thing to have, and folks in the U.S. take it for granted when they possibly shouldn't. And number 10, this one is personal to me. Other people will disagree entirely. Smoking. There's far more smoking in other countries than the U.S. It's kind of amazing, but whatever happened to make smoking less popular in the U.S. has actually worked. Whereas if you go to Europe, you're going to see a lot more smoking. Restaurants still have smoking. There's ashtrays everywhere. Cigarette machines. I mean, it's kind of like going back to the 70s. Now, you don't smoke on airplanes, so that's still fine. But if smoke really bothers you, you are going to encounter more of it if you go to Europe or Asia or South America. I mean, basically anywhere other than the U.S. So I have to give that one to the U.S. Now, if you are a smoker, you're going to have exactly the opposite experience because you're going to find a whole bunch more places to smoke. It's much more accepted, and people won't look down on you as much. Although, if you buy a pack of cigarettes in Europe, it's going to have some really grotesque imagery on it. That's how they're trying to dissuade people from smoke, is to, like, put a picture of diseased lungs or something on there. So, yeah, you could always cover that up or whatever. I thought that since I tend to bash the U.S., some people would say, I thought I would just, for once, look back and see all the different things that the U.S. does better, in my opinion. You are welcome to disagree. Feel free to at me at jeff@builttogo.com. That's 2 T's, not 3, not 1. And we could have a little discussion about it. Or you might be able to change my mind because you pointed out something I got wrong. Big thanks to everyone who has donated a gallon of whatever at buymeacoffee.com/built-to-go. You people are the reason there are no ads here, and we like that. Special thank you to those of you who do this every month. If you would like to help support the show, visit buymeacoffee.com/built-to-go and buy me a gallon or two or whatever, and that will help us all out because fewer ads is a very good thing. Thank you. Van life news. One big item, something I promised I'd talk about, which is we have a small to mid-sized van coming back to the U.S. It is a miracle. And no, it's not the NV200. No, it's not the Transit Connect. It is the ProMaster City, of all things. And what's happened here is basically Fiat, who owns Ram, the Stellantis is basically Fiat. It's a conglomeration, but it's essentially Fiat. They're going to bring over some of their European vans that they've been selling as Fiats and Peugeots and sell them in the U.S., and it's going to be called the ProMaster City. It's going to have a different drivetrain because mostly over there they're using diesel engines with manual transmission. This thing is going to have a 1.6-liter four-cylinder turbocharged engine, much more powerful than you might think a 1.6-liter engine could be, and automatic transmission only. And it's weird because Ram does weird things with their automatic transmissions. There is no stick shift at all, and you don't even have the little wheel that the trucks have. There's just this little tiny toggle switch on the dashboard. A little bit strange there. But the vehicle itself is going to be made into camper vans. Absolutely, it will be. I think it's going to take a little time. They're $40,000 stripped. If you go to buy one and you get the base model, it's going to be $40,000. It goes up rapidly from there. That's a lot of money for this little van. The van is bigger than the old ProMaster City. It's probably the size of a Metris, if you remember those, Mercedes Metris, which is also the Mercedes Vito in Europe. And you can get it as just a cargo van or as a passenger van with seats and windows and such. And then you can modify them in the middle there, but the cargo van is probably what most people would get for building out a camper van. I have not test driven the thing. I've never even seen one other than the ones I saw in Europe, and I think it's going to be a pretty good platform. It's got some quirks. It's a little bit weird in how the back is designed. The wheel wells kind of keep going. There's these bumps for the wheel wells, and then there's like this rib that follows back from them that eats up space in the back. I'm not sure what that's about. The fuel filler is in the wheel well on these, so maybe there's something weird going on there. But anyway, it's something you'd have to work around. One thing I did notice that was a little weird is there's a center console between the two front seats, which is nice. And you can remove it, which is also nice. If you wanted to be able to just walk in the back from the front, you can do that. But underneath it is the jack for the spare tire. That's where it lives. So if you remove that, you're going to have to find a new home for that. So that's a little odd. And another thing I noticed, which I'm not sure why they did this, there's very little space under the hood. The hood is big. It's a big hood, but when you lift it up, it's a cramped engine bay, which is kind of an issue. I mean, my NV200 had a nice, big, generous engine bay. I don't know why they made this one so difficult, but it is. So, it's not going to be that easy to work on. The interior height looks a little low for me, especially in the passenger version where there's this air conditioning console that runs down the middle. But I don't care. I'm just glad to have a small van again. And I think we're probably 5 years out from these things being affordable enough that people will want to give them a try, unless some big manufacturer starts manufacturing them again. But they're going to be $80,000 or $90,000 because the base is $40,000. It looks like a very comfortable vehicle to drive. It has 2 digital screens. In fact, I don't think there are any analog gauges in this. It's got a digital dashboard and then a big screen for the stereo. And I think it's going to be a nice vehicle. It has kind of a funny-looking front end, but the old ProMaster Cities look like Snoopy to me. So, Anyway, I have a video in the show notes from YouTube, or you can just search on them yourself. I mean, these are starting to come out now. But that's a pretty big piece of news, and I consider it positive news, and hopefully the other guys will catch on because, Ford makes little vans, Toyota makes little cargo vans, Nissan still makes little cargo vans. I mean, the vans exist, they're just not in the U.S. Maybe if these sell well, and they might with the way gas prices are, maybe we'll start to get more, and that would be a good thing. Tech Talk. On the trip, I brought a whole bunch of Paracord, and we were going to make Paracord crafts, and we did to a little bit. It didn't work the way I wanted, unfortunately, because it was difficult to organize things. But I did a lot of research into what you can make with Paracord. And if you haven't seen this stuff, it's called Paracord because it's similar to the cord that used to be used to tie up parachutes. Paracord, parachute cord, you get it. It's not actually the same stuff anymore. A lot of people call it 550. It's a thin nylon cord that's very strong. Now, there are different grades of this. If you buy the cheap stuff, it's not as strong as you might expect. And then if you buy the Harbor Freight paracord. It's probably not going to be as strong as something you've got like at Home Depot. And read the specs. If you need this to be strong, make sure you get the good stuff. But the reason I'm bringing it up as in Tech Talk is because the stuff is pretty good stuff for a lot of things. It has two characteristics that are really nice. One is that it's smooth, so it doesn't catch on anything. The other is that it holds knots well, and you can undo those knots. And that's a very nice characteristic to have in a cord. Usually it's one or the other. You can buy nylon rope that's easy to undo, but it doesn't hold knots well. Or you can buy, like, say, cotton clothesline, which holds knots really well, but it's really hard to undo them. This stuff is in the middle, and I find it very easy to get the knots undone. But boy, you can use this for anything. I mean, you can make belts out of it, you can make bracelets, you can make lanyards, you can use it for guy lines to hold your awnings down, you can use it to tie things to the roof. It's cheap. And the idea is you just grab a bunch and throw it in there and use it for whatever you want. I kind of feel like you kind of just should have some of this in there. Now, that said, it's got some issues with it. First off, when you cut it, it will start to fray immediately. It's nylon, so the nylon starts to fray immediately. So what you have to do is, right after you cut it, you need to melt the end. You either need to use a cigarette lighter on it or something like that, which is easy. Just make sure you don't touch the plastic when it's molten, because it will burn you. I have burns on my fingers right now. So keep that in mind. The other thing is that if you buy the cheap stuff, it will let you down. And it's hard to know, looking at it, the difference. Case in point, I tied down a tarp with Paracord that I actually think I did get at Harbor Freight. And big gust of wind came and it broke the Paracord. The cord snapped. Most Paracord won't do that, but this stuff was exceptionally cheap. So if you're going to use it for that kind of thing or for tying things down, make sure you look at the specs and you get the good stuff. Now, this stuff is very popular with preppers and in survival groups because, well, you can make a belt out of it, for example. Then if you need it, you can unweave the belt and you've got like 300 feet of cord. Or you can have a bracelet that does that. But it's just this, like, it's the duct tape of cords, if that makes any sense. Not that duct tape is worth a heck of a lot. And I think you should have it. You can do all kinds of things with it as long as it isn't touching something that gets hot, like you wouldn't want to tie up a muffler with it. You can use it to tie a door shut. You can use it as an emergency leash if you find a stray dog. Your creativity is the only limit for what you can do for this stuff. And it's cheap. Did I say it was cheap? It's pretty cheap. So anyway, I don't have any links to it or anything. It's just Paracord. You can find it wherever you want. But consider tossing a roll of it in your van. I'll bet you use it before you think. Product review. Okay, this is a little strange product review for a Van Life podcast, but this is a thing that works really well, and it's an iPhone case. Okay, it's just an iPhone case, but they did such a good job with this, and it's only $20, and I want to talk about it. So, it's made by this company. I swear, these names. The name of the company is P-Rock. P-Rock. Yeah, like if you camp in the same spot all the time and you have that one favorite rock you visit in the morning, yeah, like that. P-E-E-R-O-C-K. P-Rock. Great name for an iPhone case. But it is made out of that kind of rubbery stuff that is really good when you drop it. I have dropped this phone probably in 6 different countries now, and it has always been fine. So for protection, the thing is great. But there's a lot of phones that do that. Well, a lot of phone cases that do that. What makes this one special? Well, it's the ring. So this is for iPhones. Android, I don't know if they make cases for you, but of course there's so many different Android phones. You guys have a harder time finding cases. So we're just going to talk about iPhones here for a little bit. iPhones have a thing called MagSafe, which is on the back. You can use a magnetic charger. And the problem with that is that it often interferes with things like rings and hooks and stuff that you'd want on the back of your case. This one has a ring that folds down into a stand, but also folds up, and you can use the MagSafe on it. And I do that all the time. When I get in my truck, I just slap this thing on the MagSafe, and it holds it in place. And then when I'm carrying it around, or let's say I'm having lunch at a cafe, I just flip the stand down, and the phone just sits there right on the table, like sitting up, and it's very strong, and you can rotate it so you can do it any way you want. And this was handy on the ship. You can put a lanyard on it so you can hold on to it around your neck or whatever. You hear that noise? Yeah. That is Minutia. Sorry, we're being interrupted here by this app. I've talked about this app, Minutia. Minutia is this app that will just interrupt your day every once in a while and make you take a picture and share it with one other person in the world anonymously. I love it. It is just this quick little moment of being with somebody else. And when you do this, you will upload your photo, and then you will see the photos of somebody else anywhere else in the world, and you don't know what they're going to take pictures of. You can't save the photos. You have a limited time to look at them. It's just a brief window into someone else's life. Anyway, it happened to interrupt me on the podcast, so let's see. It's somebody sharing their screen about their aerobic workout profile, which is interesting, and they might be they're in a home theater. That it looks like they're setting up a home theater. That's interesting. And, I see. It was a workout screen. And I don't know where they live. Sometimes it'll tell you, but I can see their mud room, so they might be in the U.S. Yes, they're in the U.S. because the welcome mat says welcome home. And let's see. They have a drainage pond in their backyard. Anyway, I don't know where they are. It's 76 degrees where they are, and the leaves are all out, but none of them are palm trees, so I'm going to guess they live maybe in the Carolinas. I don't know. Anyway, sorry to interrupt with that, but it interrupted me, and that's kind of the point of it, so I thought that I would share that with you. They got a picture of my podcasting software, which I hope they enjoy. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, Paracord. No, I'm sorry, we were done with Paracord. We were talking about the phone case. So, the phone case, listen to this. That's the sound of the rings spinning. And I don't know. It's just very versatile. It's very tough. It's $20. And if you need an iPhone case, you can't really go wrong with this. And they come in super bright colors. This is my thing with iPhones. I got the orange one. I don't really like orange as a color. It's not my favorite color. I have nothing against it. It's just not my color. But I got it because I can see it. Every other phone I've had just disappears somewhere. You know, either I put it down and it's just this black mirror, or I'll flip it over and then it's just this piece of metal that just blends in because it's dark blue or purple or whatever. Orange works, and so I got the bright orange one. I'll have a link in the show notes. It's a very good case for $20. I found it really useful on this trip because I used every single one of its features, especially the dropping protection. Tales from the road. So I completed a bucket list item on this trip, and in fact, it's why I organized the trip. And it starts with watching TV in the afternoons. So there used to be this Saturday afternoon TV show called Wide World of Sports. I'm not a sports guy, but back in the 70s, you didn't have a whole lot of choice as to what you were going to watch. There were basically 3 channels. My dad liked sports, so Wide World of Sports was on all the time. And it has this famous opening scene of this guy completely wiping out as he's trying to ski. And it says, "The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Dun, 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 dun." And you see this guy just completely fall apart, and all his stuff flies everywhere, and he actually falls off a jump, and he was fine. I found this out later. He was actually fine, but it looks horrific. Anyway, Wide World of Sports really doesn't have anything to do with this story, except that there was an ad that would always run during Wide World of Sports, and it was an ad for an insurance company called Prudential. And I, as a kid, did not care about insurance, and I still don't, although I understand its utility. But Prudential, their logo that I saw all the time was this rock. It was just this big rock. And I was a curious kid, and I just like, why that rock? Like, they picked a rock. Why'd they pick that rock? What's special about that rock? And I thought maybe they had just made up a rock, you know, like, oh, it's insurance, it's stable, it's secure, it's strong, it's a rock. But I asked my dad about it, and he said, oh, that's the Rock of Gibraltar. And so for 50 years, I've wanted to see the actual Rock of Gibraltar. And the closest I ever got to seeing it, well, other than in the James Bond movie Living Daylights, which the opening scenes take place on the Rock of Gibraltar, was on a trip to the Canary Islands I took a few years ago where I sailed through the Strait of Gibraltar and I could see it. I was like, there's the Rock of Gibraltar. And on the other side was Jebel Musa, which is a mountain in Morocco. And those two make up the Pillars of Hercules, which is too long of a story to get into, but very important concept in the history of Western civilization. They marked the end of the known world, basically, and the Mediterranean was the known world. And if you sailed through the Pillars of Hercules, you were on your own. You were out there in the Atlantic, and anything could happen to you. Columbus, etc., etc. Anyway, so I finally got to see it, but only from a ship, and I was like, well, I really want to visit it. And when I was looking for a way to organize this sailing trip, I found the one trip that went there. So we sailed the Royal Clipper into Gibraltar. And at 6 a.m., as soon as the sun came up, I went out on deck and I watched us sail in. And there it was. The Prudential commercial was right in front of me with this massive sailing vessel heading towards it. And behind me was Jebel Musa, the other pillar. And it's one of the few places on Earth where you can see two continents at once. I was looking at Europe and Africa was behind me. And the history in that narrow strait of water, this is the only way you can get into the Mediterranean from the ocean. I don't know. It was just an overwhelming moment. And absolutely beautiful. And I took way too many pictures of it, and that nobody's going to care about because everybody who goes to Gibraltar takes a picture of it. But it was just, it's hard to describe in a podcast, but it was one of those moments of like, yes, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I travel. And I've had those moments in my van, and I will have them wherever I go, but they're not that common. Sometimes you can make them like I did with this trip, but those are the moments that I absolutely live for. Now, we got to Gibraltar, we docked, and we got to explore Gibraltar. And I took a little tour that, took us up into the rock, basically, literally. We went into this cave in the rock. It was this massive cave. It turns out the rock isn't all that solid after all. Not only are there natural caves, there's endless miles and miles of tunnels that the military has built. But we didn't go to those. We went to the cave, and inside the cave is this giant cave with all the stalactites and stalagmites and curtains of rock and the whole thing all lit up in LED just like it was a 1950s tourist attraction because, oh yeah, it's a 1950s tourist attraction. It was a little bit corny, I have to say, but it was still kind of nice. And then also inside there, they had turned one of the biggest chambers into a theater. Pretty good-sized theater. It would hold a few hundred people, and I wonder what it would sound like to have a concert in there. And I did not have the opportunity to see one, but I would definitely try to do that. And the way you get out of the cave is you walk up the stairs in the theater, and then at the top of this theater, there is, you guessed it, a gift shop, of course. It's a gift shop with very nice views. But then when you go outside the gift shop, there are monkeys, which is a lie, but everyone's going to tell you that lie anyway. There are no monkeys on Gibraltar. What there are apes, and those apes are Barbary macaques. There's 300 of these Barbary macaques free-ranging all over Gibraltar, and we were warned that they were dangerous, like they will try to steal things from you because they have learned over the years that if they steal something from you, you will try to distract them with food, so they'll take your glasses or your hat, and you will throw a donut at them or something, and they'll leave the hat behind and grab the donut, which has basically trained them to steal hats and glasses because that's how they get fed. We didn't have any problems like that. In fact, we found out that they are fed by the service that is monitoring them. They're a very heavily managed population. And you can just hang out with them. I mean, you're not supposed to touch them, and you shouldn't get too near them, but they're not afraid of you. You can go stand a foot away from them, and it's fine. You're not disturbing them at all. And that's good, because they have really big fangs. You do not want to get into an altercation with any kind of ape, even these rather small Barbary macaques. But that was a great moment. I had this thing I wanted to do, and actually took, how many people were 60 people? Something like 60 people with me to see this thing. And it was really cool. People really enjoyed it. And it was also a little strange because it's the UK. So the Rock of Gibraltar is on the southern coast of Spain at the very bottom point of the Iberian Peninsula, but it's managed by the UK. And Spain is not all that cool with it. They kind of accept it, but they would rather have it back, I think. And it's of such strategic military importance that the UK is never going to give it back. But it's a great trivia question place because if somebody asked you, where can you be in the UK and drive on the right-hand side of the road? The answer is Gibraltar, because it's such a small place and it's so close to Spain that it would be super impractical for them to drive on the English side of the road there, so they just gave up. And basically, you're in the UK, but you're driving on the right-hand side of the road. Folks, it can take 50 years to do a bucket list thing, but that's what bucket lists are for. You just keep them there, and then when you see an opportunity to check something off, you go for it. And that's what I did, and I'm very happy that I did, and I hope everybody who came with me was just as happy because that was a lot of fun. A place to visit. There were many, many places I just came from. I could pick any, but I want to pick one specifically because of how it happened. We were in the city of Cadiz. It's C-A-D-I-Z. I used to say Cadiz, but now I learned they actually say like Cadiz is how they pronounce it, Cadiz. And it's in the Andalusian region of Spain, on the southern part, obviously. It's kind of next to where Gibraltar is, although not directly, but it's a wonderful old city. It's on a peninsula. It's almost an island. And there's 3,000-year-old stuff there. It's old, it's new, there's lots of stuff to see. There's an amazing camera obscura at the top of this tower, and the towers were built by merchants so that they could climb up and see their ships coming in. Just a classic Spanish Phoenician city, also Roman, but really Phoenician in base. And when I went there first by myself when I was on that Canary Island trip I mentioned, I saw this very strange thing. It was a kind of a nondescript kind of office, maybe mixed-use building, maybe 5 stories tall and kind of, very modern. It didn't match the other stuff. And there was this little sign, in Spanish, of course, because it's Spain, and I made out the words that it was like a museum of architecture or something. I wasn't quite sure, but I don't know. It just caught my eye, and I went in. And it was kind of like a lobby, and there was a desk, and there was a woman sitting behind the desk, a security guard, and she didn't speak any English, but I was able to kind of fake Spanish enough to find out that it was free, and I was welcomed there, and where I wanted to go was down the stairs. I had no idea what I was walking into. And so I did. I went down the stairs, and I found myself in a Garum processing center. Now, Garum, or Garum, G-A-R-U-M, is Roman fish sauce. This stuff was the stuff that conquered the world. I mean, this was like if you think ketchup is popular, you have no idea how popular this fish sauce was. It was such a huge deal. Every major city made it, and they exported it, and everybody had to have this all the time for all their food. And this was one of the processing centers, and they had found it when they were building this modern building. And rather than just take pictures and cover it up, they basically built a museum in the basement to house it. So all the stuff they planned on doing with that building is still happening, but in the basement, well, it's a free museum. And they let you come in. And you go down there, and the floor is glass, so you can see through it. And you're walking over these pits where they would make this garum, which the process by which they made it sounds horrific to me, but it's basically they would take fish and fish guts and pour them in these massive pits. I mean, these things were the size of small swimming pools, and just let it sit there for 4 months. And then afterwards, they would kind of skim off the liquid, leaving the solids, and bottle that and sell it. And according to what I've read, Asian fish sauce is the closest we have to that today, although some people are talking about making it again. Given that the fermentation process started with fish feces, I don't think it's high on my list of things I want to try. But it was a really interesting place to see, and they had found other artifacts that are in a glass case, so there were like coins and fish hooks and things like that. And while you're wandering in this place, there's a screen that pops up, and it shows you like the history of what it was and tells you the story and stuff. So anyway, This is not the most major attraction in Spain or anything. It was just a really cool spot. And if you are ever in Cadiz, I recommend that you find this place and just go in. It's around the corner from the Camera Obscura, which is a big thing. You will hear about that if you go to Cadiz. It doesn't take that long to see. You'll spend maybe 15, 20 minutes there, but it's a cool, interesting thing that you're suddenly 2,000 years ago in Roman history, and I don't know, I really like things like this. So I have a link in the show notes to what this place is. Its name is I'm going to try this in Spanish, Arqueological Factoria de Salazones, which means the salting factory of a long time ago. Archaeological salting factory, I guess, is the closest translation. Cool thing to see, and I took a bunch of people there, and they liked it just as much as I did the first time, too. So it does have some appeal. Link in the show notes. If you're ever in Cadiz, check it out. Resource recommendation. Again, sorry, Android people, this is an iPhone thing, but the calculator on your iPhone, you have probably used it to, calculate. It is much more powerful than you might know. Yes, it has a basic calculator, a scientific calculator, and now a Math Notes feature, which does things. I don't even know what Math Notes does. I have to find that out. It does that, but that's not what I want to talk about. It has a feature that if you click on the little calculator icon in the program, you'll see something called Convert. If you click on Convert, it will convert anything to anything. And when I say anything, it will convert angles, area, currency. Yes, it has up-to-date currency conversions. You don't need to download a special program for that. Your calculator can do it. It does data such as bytes, bits, gigabytes, etc. Energy units, force, fuel, length, power, pressure, speed, temperature, time, volume, and weight. It will convert all those things for you. You just enter the value you know and the units you know and tell it the units you want, and it'll give you the value you want. Very simple interface, very powerful, and it's like you wouldn't know this was here unless you wanted to press a lot of buttons in your calculator, which most people aren't going to do. You're just going to go in there and figure out what 20 times 307 is and then leave. But don't. Take a closer look. You can convert anything you want, whether it's stuff for building your van or if you're traveling internationally, it's money or whatever. With your iPhone, it's built in. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to download anything. You don't even have to be online. It will download the currency conversions when you're online sometime, and they'll be fairly accurate. Great little simple thing that you have in your pocket and probably didn't even know about. Well, folks, thank you very much for, again, being so patient. I'm sorry it's been so long since I've had a real episode. And, this was episode 293. Music, as always, is by Simon Wagg, and if you need to get a hold of me for any reason, I am jeff@builttogo.com. That's 2 T's, not 3, not 1. And until next time, remember the words of T.S. Eliot, who said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started, and know the place for the first time."